It has been 21 years since we last saw Michael Jordan play in the NBA, and since then, it has been said many times that we had found the next one. However, only one ended up being the one who really continued his legacy. While we have some modern NBA players who were compared to MJ, none of them ended up being even a quarter of what this boy generated. But now, a new player has appeared who perhaps can be the face of the NBA for the next 15 years. Maybe it is also too early to put Anthony Edwards in that place, but the reality is that, with everything we are experiencing and with everything that Ant is causing, it is almost impossible not to bring the name of Michael Jordan for comparison. This season, Ant got his second call to an All-Star game, confirming that he is a true NBA star. And while we were all impressed with the things he did in the regular season, seeing what he is doing in the playoffs, we realize that Edwards is serious to the point that many people are starting to compare him to the GOAT himself, which is no wonder. In both cases, we have players who are very good in both sectors of the field, incredible scorers who can defend any opponent. So, we are going to analyze a little what Edwards was doing in these last playoffs. Specifically, I want to focus on what we saw against the Denver Nuggets. In the first 4 games, Ant averaged 33 points, 5 assists, and 5 rebounds, shooting 60% from the field and 44% from three-pointers. The particular thing about Anthony Edwards is that we see a 3-level scorer in the best Michael Jordan style. Just look at the statistics in these playoffs. In the paint, he averaged 70%, for mid-range, 50%, and in triples, 42%. And you know what? Let's compare the statistics of Michael Jordan's shots in his prime. In the paint, 74%, mid-range, 51%, and triple, 38%. Very, very similar. Yes, Anthony Edwards is a little better in triples, but of course, that also has to do with the era in which it is played today, where the triple predominates over any other shot. On the other hand, look at the numbers of both players in an isolation situation in which they face one-on-one against a defender. Edwards ends up scoring 1.14 points per game with 54% from the field, and Jordan 1.23 points per game with 53.7% from the field. Here again, to give you context, having 50% scoring with isolation in the 90s was really crazy, and it means much more than 50% today. But as I said, Edwards is not only about scoring. Look at these defensive statistics against the Nuggets. Every time he defended a player who ended up taking the shot, the attackers ended up with a poor 10 of 37 from the field. That is, only 27% of the shots they tried to put on Edwards ended up going in. This statistic is brutal because it shows us the intensity of Edwards and also how intimidating he is. It may be having him in front of you in a 1-versus-1, but here I am not just here to compare statistics. One of the reasons why it is said that Edwards can be the next Jordan is because they are very similar physically. The result is quite surprising. What's more, if we take the piss out of this photo, wow. Yes, it's okay. There may be many players physically similar to Jordan, but I'm not referring to height and weight. Because yes, even if we compare them in that sense, Ant and Jordan are quite different. What I'm also referring to is their way of playing and their way of being on the court. The playing styles are very similar, and watching Anthony Edwards is like watching Michael Jordan play in HD or in 4K. They have the same mentality, they move in a similar way, they attack the rim in the same way, and they even have almost identical movements. Furthermore, seeing both of them on the court, we feel the same. They play not to compete, they play to win, to dominate, and to kill. In fact, it's even funny to see how Anthony Edwards is beginning to adopt certain Jordanian gestures, a provocative player who outtweets his rivals, and it turns out well. Both Jordan and Edwards are players capable of making you look ridiculous on the court. And believe me, that's not so usual to see in the NBA. Without going any further, in the 2024 playoffs, Edwards decided to spice talk Kevin Durant, yes, the KD himself, who is considered by many the best scorer of all time and a future Hall of Famer. We also know that Durant is precisely one of the players to whom you should not trash talk because history has shown that if you do, you end up badly. But despite being 13 years younger, Edwards decided to go look for him no matter what could happen. He has enough confidence in himself to do it. In the last duels between Minnesota and Phoenix, we saw Ant shout several times at KD, and on several occasions, he looked for him to post up. Not only did he end up scoring more points than KD during the entire series, but he also ended up humiliating him with a sweep, eliminating him 4-0 in the first round. Oh, and on top of that, look at the gesture he made as if to finish burying it. As if it were not enough, in the second round, he traveled to Colorado to play against Denver and dominated the first 2 games, winning at home. Then in Minnesota, he returned to play well. And although the series is not finished, it gives the feeling that Anthony Edwards can take Los Lobos to the conference finals again. We saw Edwards dominating and killing an important player because now they beat the Nuggets team, where the best player in the world, Nikola Jokic, plays. He was given the MVP award, but at the same time, Ant is totally making a fool of him. Clearly, Edwards and his team don't seem to care much. Mike Tyson already said it. Everyone has a plan until they get hit in the face. And that is what Minnesota is doing. They gave him a hit in the first game, another in the second, and hold on because they are preparing for the knockout. Another thing I noticed with Edwards is that he has a special aura that makes him unique in his kind. And you know what other player had precisely that? Michael Jordan. When in the 90s a team beat the Chicago Bulls, not only was the team beating them, but they were also defeating Michael Jordan. Now the same thing is happening. There is no talk of Minnesota, just talk about Anthony Edwards. That is another characteristic that Michael Jordan had. People wanted to watch basketball, watch the NBA, Watch the Bulls just to see MJ. Watch the NBA. Today, it is happening to me and Juan. I have friends who tell me, "Did you see what the guy did?" I quote from Minnesota. Others asked me, "Juan, what's up with that Edwards? Did you see that they say he's the new Michael Jordan?" When players appear who surpass the average NBA public, you realize that they are serious things. Those special players are the ones who give their appeal to the NBA. They are those players that make you want to say, "Today I'm going to sit down and watch the Timberwolves." In this case, the reason is clear, seeing how Anthony Edwards plays. Another thing I feel is that Ant has vibes of being a player who is going to spend his whole life on the same team. They don't feel it just like Jordan, who spent his entire career in Chicago. Yes, it's fine, he retired in Washington, but you understand what I'm going for. I get the feeling that Ant is going to be the next face of the league in the NBA, and at the same time, I feel that his whole life is going to end being a Minnesota player. We hope that he will finally be the great figure that gives the ring to the Timberwolves. But be careful, this loyalty thing ends up happening to me also with Luka and the Dallas Mavericks, and with Shai and Oklahoma City Thunder. I hope the three players end up being idols in these three franchises, and they can stay there for their entire careers. Despite being a person who plays with a lot of aggression, who plays trash, who trusts a lot in himself and perhaps even becomes a little arrogant off the court, Anthony Edwards is a very respectful and very humble person. In fact, in recent days he came out to ask people to please stop comparing him to Michael Jordan. He said, "He is the best of all time. You can't compare me to Michael Jordan." Although there is still a reality, Edwards is only 22 years old. He is very young, and he still needs to win many championships and many MVPs to prove that he is the player of this era and therefore validate that he is the next Michael Jordan. He also needs one more thing to beat the record of most points scored in a playoff game, a mark that Michael Jordan owns. MJ scored 63 points in 86. You know what? It feels like the record is about to be broken, and there is no doubt that the one who is going to do it is Anthony Edwards himself, who many are saying is the next Michael Jordan. Just as it happened at the time with Kobe Bryant, today what is happening to us with Anthony Edwards? We are seeing a future NBA superstar with a unique mentality and a killer instinct rarely seen in the NBA. I would like to read your comments. What do you think about Anthony Edwards? Do you think he can become the next NBA player? Since you are down there in the comments, I invite you to give this video a like and subscribe.